Christy Drutman, and you are listening to Brown Girl Green. I interview environmental leaders and advocates about workplace and member diversity and inclusion and finding creative solutions to the climate crisis. I'm working to change the image of what it means to be an environmentalist in the 21st century. In this week's episode of Brown Girl Green, I interview an Instagram influencer about the power of social media in empowering people to take action on environmental issues. We discuss some of the quick, cheap, and dirty tips you can take to live a more sustainable lifestyle, as well as how you can turn your meme into a movement. How can we turn clicktivism, or just heart emoji reacting to a photo, into actually thinking about systemic change, as well as how people can actually spread the good word of environmentalism on social media platforms at a fast rate that will get us the results that we need to encourage people in the next 10 years to take the immediate action and steps they need to educate and empower their friends and family around them to deal with the climate crisis. So I'm super excited to have you listen to this week's episode, and please smash that young subscribe button because your girl is trying to save the planet one podcast and post at a time. Take a listen. Today I have an incredible guest, the host of Go Green, Save Green, an online platform mainly hosted on Instagram. She goes by Go Green, Save Green, but her real name is Ariel Maldonado, and she comes from Southern California, and I wanted to have her on my show because I have been following her since the beginning of 2019, and I followed her when she was at like 8K followers. And I remember seeing some of her first posts and just seeing that in her profile description, it said, by a woman of color, for people of color, an environmental platform. And I was shook. I was like, what? There's someone out there that is thinking about how to take environmental issues and bring it to folks that want to save money, want to care about the environment, but don't exactly know how to do that. So I was pretty stoked. I reached out to her and said, we have to collaborate on something. And now she's been enmeshed into our friend circle here in the Bay Area, environmental media creators. And I'm so stoked to have her on the show today.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. What an introduction. I don't think most people that know me in real life think I'm that cool. It's new. It's weird. I don't think if anyone knew me a year or two ago, would have ever thought I would be this thing. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah. I want you to just first tell our followers, what is Go Green, Save Green? What is the story behind the name and your brand and the impact you're trying to make with your platform?
Okay, so I guess the real origins of Go Green, Save Green probably date back to 2017. That's when I saw the documentary What the Health, which I totally understand there's a lot of people that take a lot of issue with certain aspects of that documentary. But one of the things that I really took away from that, aside from the veganism and stuff like that, full disclosure, I'm not fully vegan, so sorry to disappoint, but we'll get into that later.
It's okay.
But one of the things that I really took away was the impact of animal agriculture on communities of color and how unfair that was. And it really stuck to me that these areas around animal agriculture are considered not nice areas. And when you think of not nice areas, you certainly are not thinking about white people. You're thinking about people of color. And in the documentary, you see the health issues that they're faced because they're forced to live in these lower income areas, even if they don't want to. So one of the lines that a woman in that documentary said that really, really stuck out to me and probably was a Kickstarter to all of this was, she said something people don't think about others, like what the cost is to somebody else. As long as they get their slice of bacon, they don't care that, you know, it's harming other people, because at the end of the day, all they want is their bacon, and they don't care about like what happens to other people around them. And to me, I was like, oh my God, I don't want my choices to be making somebody else's life like worse, you know. And I understand that to a degree, like we're in a system that like I can't control all that, but like if I can actively, you know, try to make someone's life a little bit better, like, and it's in my power to do so, I'm gonna be the type of person that wants to do that. So after that, it was just a lot of me trying to make little zero waste swaps here and there. And like, it was funny because I was actually cooking chicken like in a crock pot while I was watching that, and I like threw it all away. I was like, I can't do this. Like, this is horrible.
Great timing.
And then like, and then I have not bought meat for my house, like for me to prepare at home ever since.
Whoa.
So yeah, when it comes to me eating at home, I don't make meat, but when it comes to going out or somebody else's house, then that's when I will. Like if it's someone else's culture or whatever, I'm not going to say no. Because to me, the power of like veganism or like not buying meat is like not supporting that industry. So like if somebody's already bought it and already prepared it and the money's already there, and you go to someone's house and it's like a cultural dish, there is no power in saying like no, because like the money's already been spent. But like, yeah, that's where my like at least my veganism activism lies in. And so then after that, yeah, I was just doing all types of research and swaps, and I just kept talking to my roommates all the time, and I was like, yo, you should do this, you should do that. And then they were like, okay. And I started swapping a little bit, and I started inserting it to my friends and my boyfriend, and it was just like always like I kind of wouldn't shut up about it. And then they were like, you should get like a YouTube channel or like a YouTube like you need some type of platform to share this. And I was like, nah, like I don't really want to do YouTube. That seems really expensive, like a camera, and like I'm really shy, and like I don't want to show my face. Like I'm really awkward. What if somebody I know sees this and they're like, what are you doing now? And then they were like, well, what if you did like an Instagram? And I was like, maybe, like that could work. Like I don't need to have my face on it. Like it could just be, you know, something else, and like it doesn't have to be like about me. It could just be spreading information, and like my identity can be kind of more hidden. Honestly, in the beginning, like I'm so embarrassed to think about it now, but like my biggest shame was just like, what if somebody I know sees that I'm doing this? Because like I'm dead serious. I was not like, you don't have to have a background. You don't have to have hippie parents. You don't have to have a background in this to start caring about it like now. And like, because I was never, I guess I never had that identity growing up. This is like an identity that I've had to like grow into. And so like as I've been changing and as I've been more conscious, I'm a human, and like you're aware like, oh no, like people that used to know me, they're gonna be like, what is she up to? She's just like a hippie now, something, you know. And like I think sustainability shouldn't be like an identity marker. I think sustainability should just a part of life, you know. Like a goth girl could be sustainable, like a rocker could be sustainable, like I don't know, like a small town person could be sustainable. It shouldn't be, oh, I'm a hippie, I'm sustainable, and that's my thing, you know. It should be like, I think sustainability should be an overall change. And so my first post was, I think, about bamboo toothbrushes, because I was like, I'm not gonna do about straws or cups or nothing like that. Like I want to do things that people don't talk about. And that was something that was really important to me, was like getting past the quote unquote like superstars of the zero waste movement, which is like bags, coffee cups, straws, stuff like that. So I feel like that's kind of how it started. And then just every day I kept posting, and it just like blew up from there. Yeah.
Wow. Amazing. And like saving money, why do you think that appeals to a broader audience, like your handle and your brand?
Because most people obviously are now aware that like environmentalism is like an issue, and they want to do something. But something I've had to wrestle and reckon with is the fact that like change is slow, and people are not always like, people are resistant to change. So one of the most effective ways to get someone to change is if you show like, oh, you're gonna save money. Like, this is positive, this benefits you in some way. And like, I can't guarantee that like somebody's gonna care about the environment or care about the well-being of animals or care about the well-being of people that they don't see that effect, but I can almost always guarantee that like somebody's gonna care about having more money in their wallet. So to me, it just seems like the most common denominator. Money is something we all need, we all struggle with, we all want more of or need more of, or, you know, want to save. So to me, it was like, okay, a safety razor, you know, instead of buying super expensive disposable razors all the time, yeah, the safety razor is a little bit more upfront, but like the cost that you save, you know, or like a menstrual cup. It just seemed like, oh, these are ways where you're like, I could kind of push the angle on somebody who might not consider themselves eco-friendly. Like, hey, and I don't even have to bring up eco-friendliness. Like, I think I tricked my grandma into like doing things because she does not care about the environment. So with my grandma, I was like, hey grandma, if you buy this, you'll save money. And then she was like, oh, cool. And then she just did it. And I didn't mention environmentalism. And it was like an easier way to do it with like less fighting, you know, because if you can bring something up to somebody and say, save money, save that green, they're going to be like, oh, okay, cool. But if you try to like push a quote unquote agenda, that's when people are like, leave me alone. That's not what I want to be a part of, blah, 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 you know, so.
In a way, do you feel like when you watch What the Health, do you feel like you had an open mind, like you were raised with being a pretty open-minded person around these things? Like, if you could really pinpoint, like, why do you feel like you were able to be convinced to make that change, to throw that chicken out of that crock pot?
Man, I'm so embarrassed what I'm about to admit.
Okay. No, admit it. Say it.
So, the only reason I saw that documentary in the first place, watching that documentary 100% was the change, like the turning point, because I had already kind of had little like things here and there, like, oh man, the environment's worse. I had read so many reviews on it. There were so many memes, so many tweets, so many articles about like how wrong it was and how it was super outrageous. And like, it seemed like every single thing I read about this documentary was just tearing it down, trashing it. So me and my roommate saw it, and we were going to turn it into a drinking game. We were going to be like, every time they say something ridiculous, we're going to take a shot, because we were just like bored on a summer day and we're like, why not? Whatever. Like, and then like we started watching it and we started realizing like, holy shit, this guy's making sense, like about a lot of things. And like, while there was definitely things where we were like, kind of like questionable, it seemed like there was a lot of good information in there that like, I just want to say we didn't take a single shot. Like we literally like it never happened. Like we went in with the intent of making fun of it, and we totally went out like, this is wild. And like all three of us started becoming more plant-based like that day, you know?
Wow.
Yeah, I mean it went at different levels. We didn't all go at the same rate, but yeah, we started definitely eating like less meat collectively. And like I definitely, you know, have a lot to thank them and owe them for, because, you know, they were very much like a support system for me, and they definitely were like, oh, Ariel, this is something you want to do. Even if they didn't necessarily like go all in with me, they were always like, you do what you want to do, I support you, like I got your back, you know?
Yeah, I think that's so important when we're fed a lot of this media and this information about environmental issues. We don't exactly know what to do with that information. Sometimes it just feels so intense and so extreme to where like you don't exactly know where to take action. And it's really cool that you took that information and instead channeled it into like, how can I change my lifestyle moving forward?
Yeah, and like another really propelling reason for me to start my Instagram, it wasn't just my roommate saying like, you should have a platform. It was me not feeling like I was enough. Like I started making changes, but like the people around me weren't. I would constantly tell them, hey, you can do this, hey, you can do that. And they weren't changing. And so I started feeling really discouraged, and I started feeling like, well, what does it matter if I'm changing if like literally everybody around me isn't? Like it doesn't matter. And so then I was like, well, maybe if I can convince more people to like make some change or something, that would be awesome. And so like it wasn't just them saying like, you should do this. It was me feeling like my change alone was like inadequate. So that was like probably the biggest force in me starting it, was that I was hoping that it would reach somebody out there and somebody would do something. My personal Instagram has like less than 350 followers. So like now that I'm at 30,000, I never thought it was going to be that big. When I hit like 400, I was like, I did it? Like, I felt like hot shit. I was so excited. It was amazing. That's not why I started.
Yeah. And now, like, every day I see new posts. And you have just like a diverse array of content. You make memes, you make infographics, you have articles you repost, you have just like awesome like thought leaders that you really admire that you like share their content. So I'm just curious, like, what is your methodology when you wake up in the morning and you have all this information, you're like tracking hashtags or whatever you do to like getting your articles or your sources? What is your thinking process behind like, okay, this article is really gonna get people to care about environmental issues, or this picture, this meme? Like, I want to know if you could share that with our listeners.
Yeah, okay. So articles, I would probably divide them into like 3 types of articles that I post. One, current events, like when the UN releases reports, when there's like studies that are done that get released. I like to keep people up to date with that because I think understanding the current state of things, my Instagram has to balance between fear and hope. And I have to get people scared enough to change, but hopeful enough to not be like, what's the point? So there's definitely like, this is what's happening right now. This is the state of things, and this is what we have to deal with. Then there's the definitions. Then when I talk about things like environmental racism, environmental justice, white veganism, equity versus equality, and why that matters, or like how the environmental issues affect more people of color than like non-people of color, you know? So it's like there's definitions and like base knowledge that you need in order to like continue to have these conversations with people who might not have like a background in it, just like I didn't. Like everything that I'm learning and have learned and am in the process of learning, I'm just sharing that with you guys. So it's not that I'm necessarily an expert. I'm learning just as much as like you guys are, and like as I'm learning, I'm sharing. That's the difference between like me and somebody else who researches something. When they research something, just keep it to themselves. When I research something, I screenshot it and post it online. And then the last set of articles I would do is just like the swaps. So it's like if I do safety razors, there's like, this is why safety razors, you know, save like all the production of the plastic of the disposable ones. You can recycle the blades. This is the math. This is how much money you save. If you shave this many times per week, you're going to go through your razor this quickly. You're going to save X amount of money. And at the end of the day, you know, you're going to not only save the planet, but save your wallet. So like those types of things, or like, you know, how to compost. The memes are probably what most people come for initially. They're easily the ones that get the most likes, the most shares, the most comments and stuff like that. Memes are obviously relatable, they're funny, they're witty, they're quick, or they're not too deep, they're pretty shallow, and like people, you know, are like, ha ha, the environment sucks, but also kind of low-key scared, so like I should see what this page is about, you know? So then I would definitely divide it into that. And then infographics are nice because not everyone all the time has the time to read an article. So sometimes it's just nice to give out quick information for somebody who might be like, oh, I'm on the elevator about to go to a meeting. But like, look, I found this quick infographic, tells me like XYZ, and I learned about this and that really fast, you know? So it's definitely like a balance between like good, bad, funny, serious, in-depth information, quick information. It's just like trying to reach every single audience person that I can, like however much time, however much deep, you know. And I recognize that not everything I post is for every single follower, so that's why I post it all, hoping that like something out there is for someone.
Something out there is for someone. I love that concept.
Yeah. And then also when I think about what type of articles I'm posting, it's really, really important to me that one, the article is like interesting. It has to be something that people are going to care about. I can't talk about things that like, I can't talk about boring topics. Sometimes I have to discuss them, but I have to try to find articles that are not just interesting, but written in a way that's like accessible and tangible. If I try to throw out articles that are not like news articles, but like dissertations, no one's gonna want to read a dissertation.
Hell no.
And like, yeah, like I can't post a scientific study exactly how it is, but I can post a news article that summarizes that study and tells you the bullet points that you need to know. So it's like finding something that is, one, written interestingly, two, written in a way that like almost anybody can understand, and then three is like kind of explains like, this is why you should care and this is why this needs to be discussed in the first place. So that definitely like matters to me.
How do you define like accessible environmental content? I know you already kind of have described it, but like I'm wondering like two things, like how do you define accessible environmental content, and two, like how do you feel creating this platform has allowed you to, in your own way, become an environmental activist?
Let's see, accessible environmental content. I'd probably mentally define it in two different ways, which is probably horrible. I probably need two different words for this. But there's definitely like one. Okay, if I tell you everybody should be driving like electric cars, first off, that's not accessible to everybody, because like just not everyone can afford a new car, much less an electric car. And so that in and of itself is like not necessarily like good advice. It's kind of a band-aid option, but it ignores the nuances that people deal with in their life, and it ignores the fact that like not everyone is in a position where, one, they have like the access to even take out a loan, they have access to borrow money, they have access to even put some of their car, like some people can't even just like get another car because it's like they don't have a parking spot on the street for it or something, you know? But then two, so it's like about giving practical advice. Like there's easy advice like that, buy an electric car, buy solar panels. And then there's like practical advice, which like really helps people that can't necessarily buy solar panels and electric cars, like, or new shower heads or water conserving household like appliances and stuff like that. And then the other way I define like accessible environmental content is probably also just finding content that like most people can relate to. So it's not about doing research to things that people care about. Maybe not everybody cares about like what the pavement is made out of in the streets and how like the effect of concrete and cement, like, you know, what effect that has on the environment. But, you know, people care about things like, oh, like ghost nets are like hurting animals when fishermen leave nets behind that like crushes animals. And so like if I'm buying seafood, I'm creating that demand and stuff like, you know, it's like finding things that people feel like they can actually impact.
That's so good. I love that. I'm wondering, do you ever receive any criticism from people? Like, because you just said you make content, there's something for everyone. Do you ever get criticism from some of your followers that are like, that content's not for me? And like, what does that look like and how do you respond to that?
Oh my gosh, I do. And sometimes I do feel bad, and then other times like it just drives me crazy, because at the end of the day, we all need to realize saving the environment is not going to be free. It wasn't free for us to fuck it up, and it's not going to be free for us to fix it. So I understand 100% like accessibility, and that not everyone can afford everything, and like not everything is going to be like even available in your area for you to acquire. But there's definitely a line between like, oh, this is not accessible to me for whatever reason, versus like I'm using the fact that like I can't do it as a crutch for why I can't do anything. And like when I'm putting information out there, I 100% know that not every piece of information I put out there is going to be useful to every single person that follows me. However, I am not going to stop posting information because it's not accessible to some people. I'm going to continue to post information. I post about things that even I can't do, or even I can't afford, or I cannot acquire for whatever reason. So I'm not going to not put it out there just because I can't do it. I'm going to put it out there because I recognize that like all my followers are financially in a different place. And not even just financially, but just like capability wise, accessibility wise, like able body wise and stuff like that. And you know what? If like I can put something out there that helps somebody else, even if it's not me, who am I to like not be the, I don't know, gatekeeper of that information, you know? And so it's really frustrating when people, like, I used to have this one girl who constantly commented on every single thing she couldn't do. And it drove me crazy, because I was like, I'm sorry that like this isn't like working for you, but I'm not going to stop putting it out there, because there's obviously so many other people that this is helpful for. And I'm really sorry that like financially, she'd always say that she was like too poor and stuff like that. And it's like, I get it. Like I am an art degree. Like, I have an art degree in like 2019. Like, it's hard out here for like an art degree millennial, you know? But like, so I totally get financial stuff, but you know, it doesn't cost you money to bring your own utensils when you go out to eat. It doesn't cost you money to pick up trash when you see it. It doesn't cost you money to like, you know, talk to people in your lives to like change the things that they can change. You know, there's definitely things that you can do for free. And one of the biggest things out there is like educating others around you.
And I just think in general, like if you're on Instagram, you have access to internet, you're aware of this platform, Go Green, Save Green. I think in general, it's great that like people are bringing up critiques about accessibility, of course, because otherwise we're allowing, you know, we're allowing people that like did cause a lot of these problems to get kind of like a free safety pass, where we're like, okay, like we're not going to talk about the systemic causes of why we need plastic straws, who caused that, like why do we need to move from fossil fuels, who caused that. Like I think in general, like I totally hear that critique from people. And I myself had that critique for a long time, where I felt like just doing individual swaps didn't mean much. Okay, I'm doing these individual swaps, but you're not really addressing like these businesses or these corporations or these individuals who do have like the wealth and the access and the resources who caused this destruction in the first place. And now we have like low income people that have to like come together and try to like resolve it. I think it's like a weird in between to try to like figure out how to bring people in and not ignore those broader systemic issues. Yeah. Because you don't want people to feel hopeless, but you also don't want it to be like, you low income person of color, you need to feel bad because you can't make these individual swaps and like blah blah blah. I think it is like that balance, and I think that like your content operates right in that like sweet spot but like gray zone where like you're providing content for everyone. And I think that allows a space for both like those like low income folks who really like want to get involved but just like feel like it's really inaccessible, but you're like, no, hey, let me hold your hand. But then you're also like white privileged people who do have access. You're like, hey, did you know about these things? Are you aware? You need to check yourself too. So I think it's great because we need people that are creating the container for both of those realities to exist.
Yeah, and I mean, like, when people talk about, like, oh, it's not individuals, it's giant corporations, you know, 100%, you're right. Look at Greta Thunberg. Like, she is amazing. She's literally, like, what, a 15-year-old girl who, like, just stopped going to school, and she literally started a worldwide revolution. And, like, her own parents, like, I don't know how much you know about her backstory, but, like, she's talked about how, like, her own parents didn't even back her up. They were just, like, not approving at all. They would get mad at her, and she'd be like, no, I need to sit out in front of like my parliament, and I need to, you know, discuss and talk about like why I'm doing this. And now literally people around the world are like striking. And so, you know, that 15-year-old girl, most people don't expect 15-year-old girls like much out of them, you know, but she like changed everything about that, you know. And you know, even if you're like, well, what is my individual swap gonna do? Like, so what? I bought a bamboo toothbrush. That's not gonna stop like Colgate from like making toothbrushes. No, but you know what it is going to do is it's gonna take money away from Colgate. And every time you spend money on something that's like sustainably sourced, sustainably made, it's like compostable, biodegradable, whatever, a more eco-friendly version of something, you are casting your vote into what type of world you want. And like corporations, at the end of the day, they want your money, they want your business, and they will change in order to like cater to what people say they want. If you want something and you start spending your money elsewhere, they're gonna want to get in on that. There's a reason why like vegan options are being introduced at fast food restaurants, and it's not because like they'd suddenly gained a conscience. It's because people started demanding that veganism grow, and it started demanding that like this is something we want, this is something we want. Like KFC's literally all meat, and like they are providing vegan options. That's not because KFC suddenly grew conscious. It's because people are out there constantly saying like, this is what we want, this is what we need. Whether you tweet, whether you write your senator, write your congressperson, call them, post people and post things from companies and call them out, you know, spend your money in somewhere like that you believe in. You when you have to like make your voice heard in order to change these corporations. So like you can't 100% dismiss, like, you know, every single time we've had a revolutionary thinker or something like that, social change, it's because individuals are like pushing for it.
Right. And I think in general, like when we're creating a culture shift and we're creating movements, like we need people that are constantly challenging the dominant narrative. I think when we're talking about like making the climate movement happen and bringing more people into it, like at the end of the day, we don't quote unquote need everyone, but we do need like the right people, and we need a significant portion of the population to care about this, to shift the culture to where like it needs to be for us to actually be like back in harmony with planet and nature. And I think that, yeah, it's a difficult balance because I do see both sides where I'm like individuals only seeing like that person, like seeing that figurehead of like a movement and just being like, okay, like I'm inspired by that person, but like, oh, they are taking care of it. Like I know plenty of people that are like, oh, well, there's that Swedish girl doing that thing. It's like, well,
that's somebody else's problem.
That's someone else's problem. Like that's, you know, my community is like struggling with this stuff. That's just not on our agenda. So I think it is this interesting thing where we have to take concepts like individual swaps or individual culture change, like that we want to push forward, but we also need to be like thinking about the people that are not being included in this.
That's 100% why one of my biggest tips is like one of the best things you can do is like educate those around you. Because look, I'm a perfect example. I started my Instagram account because I literally started because I felt like my individual swaps were not enough. That is 100% why I said earlier, like I was watching all these people around me and they were still doing that, and it was so what that I started buying better things. But like now I have over 30,000 followers that are like learning and reading, and like, you know, I ask them, what are you doing? And they tell me like, I've done this, I've done that. And like, you know, I it's not just me anymore. Like it's not. It's like me plus 30,000 other people that are like trying to make those changes. That I've been gaining 1,000 followers a week, and if I by the end of the semester, if by the end of the year I've gained over 50,000 followers, you know, that's not a small number. And like if that growth continues, you know, like if I start telling people and I start becoming an influence, you know, companies are gonna have to start listening that like people out there putting information, putting out better alternatives, and when people become educated about a better thing, they're gonna want that, and that's where that change starts to happen. It's not that I started doing it alone, it's that I used my voice and I started creating a platform to like inform everyone around me. So that's kind of like where the line is drawn. I 100% could not by myself take on like Chevron, but like if I had like millions and millions and millions of people behind me and like the right people, like you said earlier, behind me, like then that's when change happens, you know. But like an individual is just like a spark.
I love that. It's a spark we need, people. Yeah, want to know, like, has there been any content where, like, you've put out that you've really seen individuals be like, I'm going to bring this back into my real life, like, or they've messaged you? Like, could you offer some examples of that?
Yeah, so every so often, probably about maybe like once a month or so, maybe once every few weeks, I always put a post out like, hey, what are the changes you guys have been making in your life? I'll ask like, what's your favorite swap? What's your easiest swap? What's your hardest swap? What's your least favorite swap? You know, what are you struggling with? Or like, hey, I'll ask people, how have you gotten those around you to change? You know, or like, I blatantly put out a post that says, tell me what you're doing. Tell me what you're changing. Tell me how you're educating others. And like, I'll start conversations. And my favorite thing about those posts is that like I love when I have like 70, 80 comments of people like, oh, I did this, oh, I got my mom to do this, I got my grandpa to do this, and like, oh, I showed so and so your post, and like because of that they started changing this. I started getting my office to recycle more and stuff like that. And the thing that really excites me after that is when somebody says, hey, my mom is having a hard time doing this, I can't convince my brother to do this and stuff like that. And then other people will say, I had a similar issue and this is how I tackled it. Because then it's not just me, it's like creating that network of people that are like, oh, see, your problem isn't just your problem. I did the same thing and I can help you with that.
That's amazing. What would you say are like the top 5 swaps that like listeners should know about that could really save them some money?
First off, if you're a lady out there, menstrual cups or like cloth pads. I bought a menstrual cup probably like 2 years ago, and the only time I had to replace it was my aunt's dog went into my suitcase and tore it up. I don't know why she did that.
Oh my
She
God.
like dove into my suitcase,
That's
and then
so
I like
violent.
showed up and it was just in pieces everywhere, and I was like, what is this?
Oh, yikes.
So as long as there's like not like a dog attacking it, it'll last you like 10 years, and you pay like anywhere between like $25 to like $45 up front. But I mean, $25 for 10 years is like what, how much? Like $2 a year or something like that. Even if it's $4 a year, like that's insane. The second thing that I would suggest would probably be safety razors, because like I said, by like the razor, I think for me, I ended up buying like a $15 razor, and then you can always get like 100 blades for $10, and 100 blades for $10 should probably last you anywhere between, depending how often you shave, anywhere between like a year to 4 years. Like it, plus they're like double-sided, so the razor itself will last you basically the rest of your life, and you can get them from anywhere between 15 to like 100 and something bucks if you want to get really fancy. So how much you spend on the razor, totally up to you. But the blades, yeah, are double-edged and they're really, really sharp, and they get like a really close shave, so they save you money. Like if I spent 15 on my razor blade, or on my razor, 10 on the blades, 5 on like a little stand for it, and then 5 on like a little blade bank, which is just like a piggy bank but for old blades, and then you can recycle them. After that, I would probably say switching to shampoo bars is pretty good. I feel like a shampoo bar will last you a little bit longer. Depending on where you live or and stuff, they might be more expensive. But I mean, a bar of soap lasts a bit longer than like liquid shampoo is like 60% water. It's ridiculous. So it's like,
I never knew that.
yeah, it's like more than half water.
Oh, shoot.
So like if you're like wondering for a reason why you should switch to a bar, whatever you're paying for that shampoo, a chunk of it is water. So like there's definitely going to be trial and error as to like what bar works for you and your hair, and like I definitely recognize different people have different hair, and you're going to have to like
I'd have to use like 5.
yeah, you're gonna have to figure out like which one. But like once you figure that out, I got a shampoo bar for like $3.50. It's like, and like I tried to get one that was like shampoo and conditioner. I know shampoo, conditioner, liquid doesn't work so well, but I was just curious. I was like, it's $3. Like I would be interested to see like how shampoo, conditioner, bar works. And then I would also say like, ooh, if you can go bulk shopping, that's definitely like a money saver, because you just bring your own containers and then you're literally just buying the products. And usually it's like cheaper if you just buy the product without packaging than like if you don't. And on that note, like you should totally get reusable produce bags, because these places might offer plastic bags, and you don't even have to buy them. You can make them. If you have a sewing machine, or if you could sew by hand, you just cut a piece of like a rectangular piece of fabric, fold that bitch in half, and then like sew away, you know? I made a bunch, and it took me like an hour, if that. Like I just made a bunch and started giving them out to people, you know? And then maybe like the last thing I would suggest is buying non-processed foods. Because people say like veganism and vegetarianism is like really expensive. It actually, if you're buying like raw fruits and veggies and you're kind of like working from scratch, it's pretty accessible. Like fruits and vegetables can be really, really cheap. It definitely requires a big change from you to be like, oh, okay, I'm not going to be buying like chips and crackers and all that stuff like that, because those things are kind of more expensive for like what you're getting. But like vegetables and bulk food items and stuff like that, like those things can be a lot cheaper and like save you a lot of money. And frozen foods also, you know. So I would say really pay attention to like what you're spending your money on food wise, because people always make these assumptions about what is and isn't more expensive. But like if you just really kind of sit down and like think about it for a little bit, you can save some money while grocery shopping and like being healthier. I mean, the accessibility of that is another conversation.
Yeah.
But like if you have the ability to do so.
If you can actually have a grocery store in your like neighborhood.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, I think a lot of these swaps and things like that, I think it definitely is rooted in a conversation of just thinking about like the lifespan of like an object. Where does that object come from? How is it consumed? Where is it going to end up after its life is done? Is it going to end up in your small intestines? Is it going to end up in the landfill? Is it going to end up in your backyard? Is it going to end up down the street, in a gutter, into the ocean? I think thinking in those terms is a lot easier for people because I think like even in my own life, like my own parents, not to hate on you parents, they still use plastic water bottles.
Oh, hate on them.
And
use the public peer pressure.
And they tell me, you know, it's like we just don't exactly know. We were raised on convenience. We were raised on these habits of like, this is how quote unquote life is, or this is how the world works. And it's like people are really stubborn. So it's this question of like, you could present people these options. You have this information out there. It is that interesting question of like, how much does it take for a trend to occur to actually get people to be like, all right, I need to get on this. I need to switch my mindset and how I've lived my life up to this point.
I heard this interesting quote once that I don't know how true it is or who said it or anything like that. I just remember hearing it and being like, that's interesting. And it said, if you can get 10% of the population to change, everybody else will follow. So if you can get, and I think that's what you're starting. I think it was in reference to veganism, but like, I think it's also happening just on the broader environmental scale. Like if you can get 10% of people to become more aware of it, then like everybody will start changing, because 10% is actually a huge amount.
Like, it's a good amount of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like, especially in the US where like climate change and environmental issues, there's like some headlines, but it's like we have to dig, you know what I mean? Like as environmental media creators, like we're literally digging for this information to make it like pop in for people. And it's slowly breaking into the mainstream because of like these youth climate strikes around the world, but it's still like we need so many people to be doing that. We can't just be like, okay, there's people out there like spreading the good word. Like that's why I think things like social media and what you're doing, like I feel like people need to like have avenues to take an issue that they're like thinking about related to the environment, start like finding accounts or people they could follow and like start generating those conversations. That's why I think like the fact that you're even sitting next to me is because of social media, right?
Yeah.
And I think that like when we're thinking about building a broader movement to get people to care about these things, I think social media is like our last frontier of democracy in some ways, to really allow people to like hop on and build those relationships a lot faster. Because I think some people are like, oh, habitual social change, it's so slow. But it's like, no, we have the technology and we have like the youth and the spunk to like accelerate that 10 times the speed. And like I think that because we have access to this, even though like we have like 11 years left now, like the timer's on. But I think when we're thinking about pulling people in, I think what you're doing with like these individual swaps, while some people can be like, that's just privilege and like no one can access that, no one's gonna do that. It's like that is totally true to a point, But it's also like, in order for those of us that do have the access and the privilege to be able to make those lifestyle changes, we're creating an open space for, in general, like the overall culture to shift, to overall help others that don't have that access too. You know what I mean? It has to be a constant shift of like people with power and privilege continuing to make the good, right choices, and also wanting to lift up and liberate the people that are at the bottom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times people get up there, and then they just continue to be wasteful in some ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They don't think about that. They don't think about, you know, shifting, like turning the tides. And I think in order for those tides to be turned, there needs to be like a collective message sent to the people in roles of power that like, no, we're not messing around here anymore. Like your grandmother, your daughter, your niece, your neighbor, your firefighter, like people are like talking about this and like actually feasibly see it. So like that was the conversation I had with my parents, was like, I told them, well, what would convince you to use like a reusable bottle? Because they're like, well, yeah, we understand that that's the start. Like we need to just start at least with this individual swap. Then we can learn more about the crazy stuff you do. Yeah. And what's amazing is like I finally explained to them, I was like, this is how a reusable water bottle works. This is why it could be convenient for you. This is literally how you use it. Like, and it's wild to me because I realize a lot of people are still back there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're thinking about all these like advanced like swap. But it's like some people are like, I don't even understand why do I need a care that ends up in a landfill? Like, what happens?
Isn't that the point of a landfill?
Isn't that the point of a landfill? Like, people don't even think about these things. So I think that what's interesting is, like, my parents don't use reusable water bottles yet. They're getting there. But, like, they came to, like, a climate march that I helped organize. And, like, they've been very well engaged with, like, my climate change activism. And they really want to care, but don't have practical ways to, like, engage. And I think that's exactly why things like social media and, like, things like individual swaps and the content you put out is so important. Because it's giving people that bridge. Like, you can have all the passion and the purpose and the care in the world, but if you don't have an actual practical bridge that you can, like, take actual, tangible 1 through 5 steps and tell 5 other people about it, that's really hard. Yeah.
And that's something that I like to operate on my page is, like, I realized that, like, I had asked my boyfriend once, like, if there was something that because I needed help once. I was like, I don't know what to post today, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, is there something that you've ever wanted to know? And he was like, what are microplastics? And I looked at him and I was like, my boyfriend doesn't know what a microplastic is? And I was like in shock. I was like, how has this happened? Like, how could this be? And then I was like, wait, but like, I guess I never gave that definition. I never talked about why little pieces of plastic matter. And when you think about little pieces of plastic, they don't seem very dangerous. It seems like a very innocuous thing. And that's the problem, is that, like, we're not aware, like, why these things are a problem in the first place. And so that's what my page hopes to do, is, like, not just tell you this is what you need to change, but it's like, this is a problem, this is why it's a problem, this is why you should care it's a problem, and this is what you can do to do something about it. Because it's like, not everyone knows those, like, little things. And like I said, if they seem really innocent, why does it matter?
Exactly. How do you feel like we can move these conversations from individual swaps into, like, these deeper systemic conversations around environmental racism, justice, and voting, these things that will address these, like, bigger systems? Because I see a lot of Instagram influencers outside of yourself who promote lifestyle changes and environmental issues, but that can sometimes be a little bit dangerous when we're not addressing the root causes of why those things happen in the first place. And I know that, like, we've been talking about this a lot in this episode, but I'm just wondering, like, from your perspective, the content you've put out, like, I've seen some of your individual swap posts get, like, crazy engagement, but then you make a post about, like, environmental racism or social justice, and that gets like significantly less engagement.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, like, how have you reconciled that, or like are starting to like figure that out?
So, I do want to talk about broader issues like, you know, environmental racism, environmental justice, and stuff like that. And I think, you know, the place that these individual swaps turn into these systematic things is like, okay, so right now, communities of color, they are not aware that there are better options out there, right? So the first step is, of course, to educate them that there's a better option out there. So once enough people get educated, there's going to be a demand for that. And if that demand is not accessible, that's when people get mad. And that's when people say, we want to be a part of this. We want to do this, and we can't afford it. We can't do something like this. And like I said, every change has to start with like a voice. So these people cannot demand systematic change if they're not even aware that like it's something that needs to happen. So it's definitely like right now, as far as awareness of like, oh, being more eco-friendly, that's there. The next step of awareness is like the systematic changes that need to happen. And the only way that those systematic changes can be obvious to everybody is if I tell them, you guys should swap XYZ, because if you do XYZ, you're going to be able to create that demand. But if they're not able to create that demand, they're going to get really mad. And if they're going to get really mad, then the corporations are going to get called out. And if the corporations get called out, then they're going to be put in a bad light. And if they're put in a bad light, they're going to start losing money. And if they start losing money, they're going to have to change, you know? So it's like, you have to educate people. What are those swaps? What are, because it's not as simple as like, this is an individual swap. That's it. It's like, no, I'm creating a demand for a product. And if it comes down to basic like supply and demand. And so it's like, basically those little individual swaps, if you're only catering to like an audience that can afford them, yeah, you're not going to do anything. But if you're talking to people that like don't have accessibility to it, and then a larger conversation start, and that's where people who have privilege have to step in, because these underserved communities, they can scream and shout all they want, but they're underserved for a reason. Nobody wants to listen to them. So that's where the intersections of like intersectional feminism or intersectional allyism, you know, that's where that comes into play, where like these people want something, you create that demand, you create them wanting something, and then other people that are in a position to like make that change have to kind of speak up. So it's not a clear cut, oh, I'm buying a toothbrush and now the problem is solved. It's like, we all want to buy toothbrushes. We can't afford toothbrushes. Toothbrushes are like a basic right. Why do we have to be put in a position where we're polluting the environment? And then like you kind of, nobody can do it all by themselves. So we're going to need people in the future that are in privileged places or like privileged areas of their lives to be able to be like, hey guys, we should help these groups of people out, because this issue, the environmental issue, is going to affect everybody. Like I'm thinking about like, what do swaps matter? What do systemic changes matter? Like the systemic changes start with the swaps, and like they start with the demand, and they start with people getting angry that like they can't do things. And it starts with people getting angry that they feel like, what am I supposed to do about this?
Right. No, that's super real. I think that's something that like I think about every single day. And your platform reminds me of that. A big part of Brown Girl Green is about self-care as people of color in the environmental industry. And for me, of course, like I think creating this content is valuable, it's purposeful, it's amazing, but it can really like wear you down sometimes when like maybe your post doesn't engage as well, or maybe like you don't know if you're making the impact you want to make, and you're kind of, I don't know, swimming into waters that you don't know what's gonna bite you. And I'm just wondering, like, when taking care of your own mental health and maybe even dealing with some haters on your platform, how do you cope with that?
One thing that I've discussed in the past or whatever is something that I think has helped shield me, that at the time when I made this decision, I didn't necessarily think it through fully, is that my page is not based on my identity. So even though you can very much hear my voice and hear my perspective and hear what I have to say, you know, there is my identity in the sense that like, oh, this person definitely is thinking for themselves, but it's not wrapped up in like, I'm a Mexican girl trying to do these things. It's just, I'm somebody out there trying to do them. So when I do have haters and trolls, I think one of the things that helps me is because I was so like, I don't want to show my face. I don't want to give too much about who I am and stuff like that. It kind of helps because when random people come on my page and like troll me or whatever, they don't really have like anything to grab onto. They don't really have any personal attacks they can do. They don't like, and anything they say, it kind of rolls off my back. Like, I'm just like, well, you don't know me, like, whatever. Yeah. And then also, I mean, I'm also aware that like certain people, like sometimes if I think most of the times when I get trolls, like I look at their profile. So like, I definitely am like, who is this person? And then like, you know, when I see like a lot of the people that are the type of people to troll, I'm just like, at the end of the day, I don't really give a shit about your opinion. Like, I don't care. Like, you're not the type of person that like is making change. You're not the type of person who's influencing, you know, like if somebody, you know, like really influential was like, you know, you're not doing good, I would be like, oh crap. But like, you know, if the type of people that are like attacking me are like white guys playing video games and just like insulting everything that comes their way because that's their idea of being a man, is just being aggressive all the time, like thank you, next. Like, what's that, you know? And like, I'm starting to show my face more and I'm starting to tie my identity in more, but I'm hoping that like getting to know me is not the same as like my Instagram being me. And like, I admire people who are like, these are my lifestyle changes, this is my life, and giving a window into like how they live their lives, because I recognize that that's like super vulnerable. And in some ways I kind of do hide behind my Instagram because I'm just like, oh man, I'm putting this information out there, and like I might put an occasional story, a selfie on my story to be like, what's up guys, or it might go live sometimes, but you know, I'm not exposing myself to like people who aren't even interested. And so like, I definitely like don't face those challenges, but the only thing I can offer is like, you know, if you are that type of person that like puts all their life out there and stuff like that, I would say like, look at the people that are insulting you and ask yourself if their opinion really matters. Like, are they change makers? If they're not change makers, they're complacent. And if they're complacent, are you gonna allow somebody that's complacent to tell you how to like live your life, you know?
Hell yeah. Yeah, I think I've been dealing with some internet trolls on my platform recently, so I appreciate that assurance. I think I've definitely like been like, you know what? No, I want to step into some boss ass bitch power.
Yeah.
And you just gotta like own it, because it's like at the end of the day, if like that's your platform, that's your brand, you're gonna own it. You know what I mean? And if that's the impact you want to make, you gotta just own it.
Yeah.
While taking care of yourself and setting boundaries, but I think like you know what that is, and if you really like know yourself, you're gonna know how to like figure out how to just like shut that stuff off as much as possible. But yeah, along with like the impact of your platform, but like quote unquote hiding behind it, but at the same time, like it's without a doubt like you are kind of like growing a big ass platform. I just want to know, like, that feels like a lot of responsibility in some ways. Like, you are in a way like giving people a lot of information that they're like trusting, that they're relying on. So I'm just wondering, like, do you ever find yourself in situations where like you feel like you have to have all the answers, and like when you don't have all the answers, like how do you address that to your followers, if anything?
I do feel a huge level of like responsibility, you know, when people are like sharing stuff that I'm putting out there. So, you know, I try to get things from more reputable sources. I try to, you know, hit up like New York Times or like, you know, the Huffington Post, or like, you know, I try to find like websites that are like based on like environmental like initiatives and stuff like that, you know, and like I try not to just kind of hit up like super like left-leaning extreme like websites. I try not to hit up like mommy blogs too often. I try not like I try not to like just hear people that are like just talking about their opinion, because I'm already talking about my opinion. So if I'm going to give my opinion, I try to find things that are like more factually based. And like I'm definitely scared for the day that like I post something that's either like not right or like in like outdated, or like that's like just kind of blatantly wrong, and I'm just like, oh no. But I mean,
hasn't happened yet.
It hasn't happened yet, and I'm so scared. Like the day that it happens, just know I am going to be like in panic mode, damage control, like, oh my god, I'm gonna be stressed. But I mean, as far as like how do I deal with that? I think I deal with it like okay. I think it's like not too bad. And then wait, what was the second part of the question? Of
just like if you see your followers fighting over something, or like you see something really intense happening, like it is your platform, like how are you handling and managing that form of power that you have?
Oh man. Okay, so when I see people fighting, I kind of sometimes I have so many notifications that I don't see the fight until well after it's over. Sometimes I literally don't even see it until like later at the end of the day, when I'm like, okay, what's going on? And I'll be like, oh my god, and I look over the comments and stuff, and then I'm like, this whole ass fight broke out. Other times, if people are like debating things and talking amongst themselves, you know, I kind of let that be, because I'm trying to create a space for that conversation. However, once it becomes like non-conducive, as soon as somebody starts hurling insults, as soon as somebody's like, well, you're stupid, blah blah blah, like that's when that's kind of more when I like step in and I'm like, yo, like cool it. And I'll be honest, you know, like if I see like a debate happening and like I see somebody that just starts like throwing names around, and it's very clear that they're there just to stir shit up, I just block them, because I'm like, that conversation is not conducive. And if your only purpose is to start insulting people, like I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna get rid of you. I'm not gonna go, I'm gonna get rid of you. And like it's, I don't know,
do you feel like your platform like helps build community amongst people? Like, have you heard any stories or like had any experiences where like your followers have actually like had full-on conversations or started following each other, collaborating? I don't know if you've seen any of that happen.
I definitely see people that, you know, somebody will say, hey, I'm struggling with this thing, you know, and like give me some help, and then somebody else will come into the comment and be like, hey, I figured out how to do that thing, please message me for more information. Or and then they'll be like, oh my gosh, thanks, I will right now, and stuff like that. Or they'll give the advice in the comment, and then like we'll have part of the conversation, and then they'll be like, let's carry this elsewhere. So I mean, I don't necessarily like follow up with those people and ask them like, how did it pan out? But I see it in the comments where somebody will ask like, hey, you know, I need help with this, and somebody else will step in and be like, this is what I did. And it's pretty common. It's common enough that sometimes like I see it and I just ignore it, and I'm like, somebody will answer. And like usually people do, like almost all the time people are always like, hey, let me help, and like I want to do this. That's the nice thing about this movement, is that because it's so new, everybody's trying to kind of find their way. So everyone kind of wants to share, like, I had this problem, this is how I tackled it. I had that problem, that's how I tackled that.
And you're like just holding the container for all that collaboration. That's dope.
And like I don't know if I'm struggling, but what I'm trying to figure out is, you know, the line of like, where's the line where like I'm putting the space out for that conversation to happen, and like I'm just kind of moderating, mediating, whatever, versus like I'm micromanaging every interaction on my page, because I don't want to do that. It's like exhausting and like it's unnecessary. So it's kind of just trying to figure out like, okay, when should I kind of be like, oh, you should step in now, or when should I just be like, okay, just let that happen, you know?
So what's next for Go Green Save Green? How do you like envision expanding this.
So, I am a ceramicist. That's what I went to school for. I went to school for ceramics, so I can do pottery, sculptures, all kinds of stuff, not just clay stuff. I'm like an artist, and in my day job, I'm actually like a prop maker, so I make props for movies and stuff. So I'm just like an overall maker. I just like being hands-on, creating things, making things. But in my medium of choice, clay, I made another Instagram page called Sluts for Sustainability, and like that page is basically me providing handmade ceramic, like plastic free alternatives to things. So you like soap dishes for like all the shampoo bars you have, if you don't want, just like if you want to support an artist, like I'm here. But then also like safety razor holders, or safety razor stands, because there's actually not that many out there, surprisingly. And then just like things like terracotta water filters, how people like that don't have access to plastic water filters, they like filter it through clay, and like I know how to make those. Or like, oh shit. Like making coffee pour overs, or like cool. Making tea infusers, making like things that just things that can help kind of aid other things that you might buy in the process of like trying to be zero waste or low waste, and like little things that make your life a little bit easier. So that's kind of like what I'm trying to do personally, is like kind of expand not just my educational brand, but like my marketing, or I don't know, selling brand. But like I'm trying to make things that because that's my passion, is I love making. So I think it would be amazing if like not only am I educating people, but like saying, hey, also I do this service, if you want to support me, you can do that. And it's not even just about me, because on my Instagram I have highlights that have so many businesses, small businesses, large businesses, of people trying to do the same things as I am. So it's not like I'm just trying to hoard that group of people for myself. Like I'm very much about like trying to help other people who are trying to make their individual differences by not just like purchasing that, but like providing alternatives. I'm trying to give people a platform for that also.
Awesome. And my last question is just, what are some of the accounts or the news sources that you really just like jam with? Okay. And yeah, we'll start with that.
All right. So accounts that I love. Oh man, I gotta look at my highlights for this one. I love Chicks for Climate Change. Chicks for Climate. Yeah, I love that. I actually have a highlight tab that says pages to follow. So if you ever need it's probably the first one. I love Green Matters. They're just like environmental news. I love Pointless Packaging. They are a page that literally just like shames supermarkets into like when you go to the store and you see 2 apples in a plastic bag and you're like, why does this plastic bag need to be around these 2 apples? There's the Instagram account that like shames stores for that. I like Easy Eco Tips. They are a really like cute Instagram where like every day they give you a new tip, and they started doing it in different languages also. So it's just like, oh, swap this instead of that, and they're all super easy things. It's not always like really hard stuff. I love all the eco meme pages out there. They're pretty amazing. I love Plant-Based News, which is just like vegan and plant-based knowledge. So even if you're not a vegan, or if you're not like a vegetarian, it's kind of good to know, like kind of educate yourself as to like maybe why people do that, why somebody would decide for that. And then there's also Green for Emo, which is another just like environmental news source. There's A Million Women, which is like an Australian based organization that does like environmental news and swaps that you can do. They're really interesting. The Happy Broadcast, which is just like it's not environmentally only, it kind of does all types of stuff, but they have like, it's not all doom and gloom. Like people are making progress, people are working to make the world a better place, and they make posts about like the good things people accomplish, which is nice to follow when you're like not sure what to do. Then there's the Vegan Chub Club, which is like this platform that's like fighting this idea that like vegans have to fit a certain body stereotype or something like that, and I really like them and appreciate what they do. I think it's amazing. And then there's Public Lands Hate You. It's just like influencers that go to like nature places and stuff and then mess the environment up, and it's like we can't do, you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be stepping into fields of flowers. You shouldn't be hurting animals that are there. You shouldn't be taking things from that place and stuff like that. So those are the accounts that I really love on Instagram. Yeah.
Cool. And how can people stay in touch with you and know more about the work that you do?
You can follow me on Instagram at Go Green Save Green. You can follow my other Instagram, Slut for Sustainability. Both of them are tagged on Go Green Save Green, you obviously. And then if you have any questions, feel free to DM or comment or something like that. I also have an email option if you want to email me and talk further, or I'm always down to FaceTime and stuff like that. If you really want to reach out and talk to me, make it known. Make it known that you are oh, I really want to talk to you. And I'm always down to make a new friend.
Dope. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. This was super fun. This was, wow, we killed it. That was awesome. So I'll finish this off by thank you everyone for listening today. This is Brown Girl Green and Go Green Save Green. And this is another Brown Girl Green podcast where I interview environmental leaders and advocates about diversity and inclusion and coming up with creative solutions to the climate crisis. I'm working to change the image of what it means to be an environmentalist in the 21st century. Talk to you next time. You could have done so many things with this past hour of your life, but you chose to listen to me. Thank you for dedicating this time to listening to the Brown Girl Green podcast. I hope you smash that young subscribe button, tell your friends and family, and help me continue to save the planet one podcast and post at a time. Follow me at Brown Girl Green. Catch you on the flip.